Good morning. I wish to welcome you all to the Gambia Education Department Training School here in Tangi. And we have this occasion today with you to give you highlights and updates on some of the operations of the Migration Management Objective over the past weeks. In this briefing today, we will highlight to you some of the accomplishments that GID has been able to make in relation to COVID irregular migration. We will equally share with you some of the details we have been able to get through the investigations as to how some of these cases have also been occurred. Now, after the briefing, we will allow you to also ask few questions as to areas you want to clarify before we can take leave of this environment. In today's briefing, we will share with you 3 cases that have occurred all in the month of March. Our first case occurred on the 3rd of March 2024, where a suspected abandoned boat was found along the Vigilo Beach behind Monkey Park. Now, the boat was believed to have departed the Gambia to Senegal, where they were also able to pick up some migrants in Senegal. And then they traveled from Senegal all the way down into Settings. Now, when they went up to St. Louis, they had an engine failure and they could not continue. So the migrants had to decide that they want to come back to only save their lives. Now, when they came, over 200 migrants were in this boat, and they had traveled 4 days at sea before they came back to the Gambia. Upon arrival, many of them were found sick and injured, and they had to rush themselves to local hospitals to seek medical attention. Now, when GID was informed of this particular case, our officers were able to go to the hospitals and be able to find some of these suspected migrants. Now, out of these 200, 21 of them were found to be given medical attention, and they were now taken to the GID unit here in Tangi for necessary investigations. In this particular case, out of these 21, we've also realized that we have 2 people that are found to be perpetrators. One of them is an agent called Alhaji Top, a Gambian, and also an agent called Ibrahim Sedi, who's also a Gambian. But then the main organizer of this particular suspected intercepted case was Mohamed Jan, who's a Senegalese national. So the case also was a bit very much critical. At the end, we were able to find 1 dead body in the boat that was also left around the Monkey Park. So this case occurred on the 3rd of March 2025. A second case that we've also had with regards to COVID irregular migration occurred in the area of Nyum. It was conducted by the NBR Border Patrol Unit that is in Bara. And in this case, 30 suspected would-be migrants were intercepted. Now, out of this 30%, we realized that Senegalese, we found 17 of them. Gambians, we had 8 of them. Guineans, we had 4. When we use Guineans, we mean those from Guinea-Conakry. We have 4 of them. And Malians, we had only 1. Now, during the investigation, the following people were found to be culprits and perpetrators in the entire situation. The first culprit is believed to be Lamin Jammeh, a Senegalese national. He was arrested at the Barakapa with an amount of $74,000. Lamin had confessed to acting as a sub-agent and led GID officers to 3 other suspected migrants on the Esau highway. The second person that was also found is Abdoulaye Jate, commonly called as Papalai. Papalai was found in Bankam village, where he was apprehended as a main agent, and then he had an amount of 1,335,000 safer in cash with him as well. The other guy, Jate, had also disclosed that more migrants were in Bakalar village in Nyum, and under the custody of Al-Husseini Sonko, who is a proclaimed Marabo in Bakalar. When GID officers traveled all the way to Bakalar, they were able to find 13 migrants that were harbored by Al-Husseini Sonko as a proclaimed migrant. Now, both perpetrators have been released on bail after investigation procedures were all completed. Now, we also had another person who was a call of concern to the GID that is called Patisar. Patisar is a known boat builder in Bara, and he was called in for questioning. He is not among the organizers, but he builds boat. So he was also a concern to the GID, and he was invited for questioning. We are able to find out that the boat was not completed, and then it is currently being seized by the GID while we work on other prosecution matters as well. So in this particular operation, the GID will extend its appreciations to the communities of Nyumi for their support and also in affirming that we remain very much strong in trying to combat irregular migration. Our final case that occurred just yesterday is a case where we had 75 would-be migrants that were intercepted in Yaramba. Now, this particular case also is alarming, as we've seen that most of them are non-Gambians. And it's not only been non-Gambians in a case, but they've also been in an environment where they had to be staying under the pretext of staying there before they're able to move. Now, what happened in this case? In the early hours of March 20th, a citizen called Operations Commander of West Coast Region Immigration Officers and gave a tip-off that there is a disturbance and uncommon movements in an environment within Yaramba. So based on this intelligence, our officers were able to go there that night, March on the 20th, go survey the environment and be able to also gather information. So based on what they were able to gather, they realized that we had people who lived in that compound. They could not know exactly what was happening. It was late at night, they could not go for the operation, so they had to wait till the following day, that is yesterday, the 21st of March, when together with the West Coast Region Task Force and GID officers, they had to now raid the place to see what was happening. Now, when we went into that particular compound, we've realized that the compound they had stayed is a compound number called 985 plus RV3, that is in Olindu, Yaramba. And the compound belonged to a Gambian who's a businessman, but it was rented by a Senegalese called Abdoulaye Diop. And Abdoulaye Diop is also believed to be the organizer of that particular case. But Abdoulaye at this point is on the run, and we would intrigue the people out there to be able to support the GID in trying to intercept Abdoulaye while he's fleeing back to Senegal. Now, out of these 75 non-Gambian migrants, we've also realized that they lived in a single apartment that has only 3 bedrooms. And the environment where they had stayed is circled by many Gambians. So it becomes a concern to us that if people can live in a place, out of 75 people in one compound, you have neighbors beside you who still will feel to stay silent and not to report this case to the government. It becomes a challenge as well. So we think it's important for Gambians also to be very much vigilant when they see uncommon movements in these areas, and engage officers so we can find necessary procedures. Now, going by the statistics of this particular case, we had 34 of them who are Senegalese, 35 of them as Guineans, 4 are Gambians, and 2 from Bissau Guineans. And among this number, 63 of them are found to be male, 12 are female, and 4 are minors. Now, they were all harbored in the compound until when we had raided the compound, they were now taken to Tangi at the training school here. Now, further investigation has also revealed that we have observed in many occasions that there have been movements around that environment. But then the GIDs cannot be everywhere within the country, so it's important that the public is able to at least support us through community policing and provide some of this information that is important in the work that we do as a department. Now, out of all these 3 cases, we will not be able to just take the entire credit as a department, as we also work with partners and stakeholders. And it's important that we appreciate the work that is also being given by those people. The recent case of yesterday, if it was not for the West Coast Task Force, it would have been challenging because they would have outnumbered the GID staff we have in the operation. So, through the task force cooperation, we're able to at least conduct the operation freely without any hitches along the way. We also want to appreciate the efforts of the COP Gambia project that is funded by the European Union and implemented by the Spanish National Police. They've also been very much instrumental in protecting and also safeguarding the lives of Gambians who are taking over this particular irregular route. We will also appreciate the efforts of Guardian Civil, who have also been very great partners in this particular initiative. At the national level, GID have been working together, hand in hand, together with the Gambian Navy, who are usually in the sea on patrol, and are sometimes able to do some interceptions and will hand over the cases to the Gambian Immigration Department. Our prosecution team has also been working tirelessly together with the police prosecution unit to be able to make sure that these perpetrators are also found to be in a case where they can go through the required punishments. Now, we will appreciate the efforts of the Gambian Navy, the efforts of the Gambia Police Force, the efforts of SIS and all other security forces that continue to support the work of the GID in what we are doing. We also want to again reiterate that the COP Gambia project was quite instrumental together with the GID civil investigation. Now, as we close in this briefing, I also want to say that the GID, despite all its effort, have been doing tremendous work in trying to safeguard the lives of Gambians who are taking irregular routes. While we may have a few that are able to take over these cases, we notice that a lot of Gambians have been losing their lives in these irregular routes. So taking the risk of only a few going in, while we have thousands perishing in the sea, becomes a call of concern. So we look forward to the public support in trying to share with us information that will be very much instrumental in trying to reduce the rate of people taking the irregular routes. We also want to support and also appreciate the efforts of all GIG officers who remain committed in making sure that their duty as officers is done tirelessly. While we also conclude, we also appreciate the efforts of the police intervention unit that have also been very much supportive to the works of the Gambia Division Department. Now, these are the 3 cases we want to share with you, and we want to say that we have been losing so many Gambians at sea. And it is now time that we ask ourselves, is it worth it? Do we really have to sacrifice the young breeds of this country who can be the hopes of our dear motherland if they're able to stay in the country and find a better living? Or do we still have to take a risk that we can make it out there, putting our life at sea for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, going down to a month, and at the end sometimes we have to come back home traumatized and sometimes sick and injured. We do hope that the risk isn't worth it, and it is key that we believe in our own selves as Gambians, look at our country and its interests, and safeguard our image as our country. With these few remarks, we will appreciate if you have any comments to share or you have any questions to ask, we will be glad to answer all those questions you may have. Thank you for being here.
Okay. So, thank you so much for that. My first question would be, how does this interception fits into the GID's broader effort to combat irregular migration? And the follow-up question would be, of course, you intercepted 75 potential migrants. During your investigations, what were some of the revelations that they made in terms of taking on this perilous journey to Canary Island? I'll stop there for now, and then I'll really have another follow-up.
Thank you so much, Ali from the Partner Network. So your first question is, how does it relate to the work of the Gambia Education Department? Now, it will interest you to know that the GID is given the mandate to control the movement of people within, into and outside this country. And by movement, we're talking about regular means of moving. So anybody who prefers to leave the country through our porous borders irregularly should be a concern to us. Because if we have people coming outside into the Gambia without the entry points, it becomes a concern to the Gambia. So also if we have Gambians leaving the country without the required entry points, it becomes a concern. So irregular migration as a menace is a concern to us because not only are we supposed to safeguard the lives of people, but also to implement our mandate in trying to control migration. Now, you've also asked, what revelations do we have from these investigations? Sometime around January and February, it was quite hard for us to see migration cases or irregular migration cases because the climate then was not very friendly. And organizers knew very well that if they want to endeavor into this particular voyage, they would put their lives at risk. And they have relaxed for some moment as a break period until now that it has increased. If we're able to have 3 cases in just 3 months, it's a call of concern. Now, how does it relate to the work we do as well? Because you get to notice that our mandate includes maintaining national security. And if people can live anyhow they want, without being controlled, without being documented, without being able to have the requirements for entry into this country, then it means the Gambia as a state would be in a perilous environment. So it is a concern to us, even though we have certain gaps when it comes to legislations, to be able to support the work that we do. As we are currently working, migration is a global right, but irregular migration is not what is being advised. And then when it comes to smuggling in the Gambia, it is still not criminalized. There is no law we have in this country that says nobody should be engaged into smuggling of migrants. So if this is still under situation, we've now realized That is why we have most non-Gambians using the Gambia as a hotspot and a hub. Because if you go to Senegal, they have laws that talk about migration. So now if they are arrested or intercepted there, they can go to the courts. But if you come to the Gambia, even though you might be positive, you have minimum rules that can punish you. For instance, if an organizer is able to raise, let's say, millions in just one envelope, and the person is intercepted, and he or she goes to court, you realize that in most occasions, the highest they can be fined is about $50,000. So it becomes now a business venture for them because they realize that in the Gambia, I can still do it. I wouldn't go to a prison, I'll just be fined an amount of money and I'll go back to my business and do other activities. So it's really concerning, and I think it's important that we get the support of policymakers, we get the support of lawmakers to also help the GID in trying to have laws that's going to back our operations. As we speak, we have the Immigration Bill of 2023 that was developed and drafted with support from DICAF, the Gambia. But then up to today, since last year, that bill had not been approved by the cabinet. It has also not been moved, in fact, to the parliament level. So we have to operate unguided without any laws that back the work that we are doing. However, though we have legislative gap, we still have other documents in place, like the SOP, that is able to guide the work we do when it comes to migration cases. The SOP was developed together with partners, and it has been very much instrumental in supporting the work in how do we control migrant-related cases as well. So like we asked, it's important for us to also know that it is GID's concern to safeguard lives and protect migrants as much as possible.
So would there be any legal action taken against the organizers of this?
Yes, perpetrators are always a concern to us. When we receive suspected migrants, after we finish our investigations, they are released to go back to their families. But perpetrators are usually prosecuted. Last year, we had almost about 6 cases whereby they had been prosecuted. We had received forfeitures from in some cases, and others have also been fined by the court. So whatever efforts that the GID can make in making sure that these perpetrators are booked by law will be made. And our department is quite much committed in making sure that whatever is happening, any victim that is affected, the organizer of these particular cases will be booked and they will be taken to court for necessary procedures.
Of course, you made mention of challenges regarding community collaboration in your effort. Now, what steps or measures are you taking moving forward to collaborate with communities to actually, give information with regards to potential migrants?
Thank you so much for this question. GID over the past years have gone through a lot of transformation. The security sector reform we had in the Gambia had made an assessment of departments and their strengths and weaknesses. At the level of GID, we realized that our work needs public support, and that is why we've now established a unit called the Community Engagement Unit. What they do is to go to the media, like we have our radio source weekly, we also have our TV source, where we engage with the media and talk to them about immigration mandate issues. We've also been organizing outreach programs where we sometimes go to schools or meet up with communities. For instance, 2 months ago, the West Coast Commissioner had gone around the entire West Coast, met up with alcaldes, landlords, businessmen, and GID officers as well to engage into how can we regulate aliens legislation. So we have been actively making sure that we engage the community for them to understand our mandate at the GID and also know their role to play in trying to promote and control immigration in this country. If you have any further questions?
I would just like to know from you, regarding the last case that happened in Yarabama, the case suspect Abdullah Joe is on the run. Are you considering engaging your counterparts in Senegal for his arrest?
Yes, so Abdullah Joe, immediately when we were told that he's on the run, we have to engage all our border officials to be very much vigilant. That in case he comes back, because now we have our mobile system. Once he wants to pass through the area, they can easily know that he's the one. But then, as you all know, the Gambia also has so many porous borders that sometimes you may leave without even going by the required entry point. So there is still a chance that he might be able to escape if he doesn't pass through those entry points. However, we will engage with our Senegalese counterparts as we've been working tirelessly with them. A few months ago, we had received their own data into GID, and we talked about how can we collaborate to be able to support immigration work. So we will engage with them and find necessary mechanisms as to what could be done to have Mr. Joe also be taken into custody.
So what next now for these arrestees?
What next is that after we finish our investigations, we release the suspected migrants back to their families. They can reunite and then at least have some time to go against this program. Then the perpetrators that we had been able to find during the investigations will now be prosecuted. Court cases sometimes could take time, that we do not have the powers to control how long is it going to take for us to have our cases finalized. But the GID is always dedicated in making sure that we have all these perpetrators to be able to go through the process.
I mean, just to clarify, you talked about releasing them for reunite with their families. They are non-Gambians. Who is going to facilitate that return?
So non-Gambians, in usual cases, we do not just release them like that. We engage with their embassies and their consulates. And then they have two options. When we engage with them, those who want to go back to their compounds or their state will be released through the embassy's efforts for them to go back to their areas. But those who want to stay will also be integrated, and they will have to regularize their status in the Gambia to be able to stay as aliens within the country. So once we're done, they will engage with the embassies and then the consulates concerned and find what mechanism they can use now to at least take them back home or they can stay within the country.
Okay, Lou, you made mention the delay as when it comes to the your policy documents, yet not yet reaching to cabinet or parliament. Are there any mechanisms put in place in order to at least talk to these people to fast track it? Hence, you are still facing challenges and it is taking time.
So I think the challenges that GID face is an open book. That every single Gambian knows exactly what is going on. Getting back to 2017, we have all seen this regular being accustomed within the country. Families have been left apart. So everybody knows what exactly is happening. The same thing occurs to policymakers and also law implementation agencies as well. So what next, like you asking is, we have done our part. The bill has been developed and drafted. GID is a place where we only implement. We don't have any powers to make policies. So now, it is at the ministry's level, they should know very well that this and this is occurring within the country. And I think every single Gambian should be very much concerned about what is happening. So there is supposed to be that meticulousness in trying to make sure that they push the bill as fast as possible. It goes to the parliament, and we are hopeful if it goes to the parliament, knowing what we have in that bill, it is going to be approved. And once it is approved, then all these challenges becomes a thing of the past. But I think it has to be a political will and a commitment for them to be able to at least serve the GID and safeguard the image of Gambians entirely.
Yes, I believe it was the same thing that I want to put up first. What effort is GID making in trying to make it so that you keep pressuring this particular executive and also the legislators to understand that this is one of the key instruments that you can use and rely on when you can
GID has been doing its best. In fact, recently we are able to have a chance when our deputy director had to go to the ministry and present on the comparative analysis between the Immigration Act of 1965 and the bill that is developed currently. And the purpose of that was for them to understand as to what were the gaps we have in the 1965 Immigration Act and what do we have special in the Immigration Bill. So we've been doing our best, but again, we also have a stoppage. We have a point where we can stop. That as law enforcement agencies, we sometimes have to be compliant to policymakers as well. And if we have pushed to the edge and it is still not being seen as very effective, then we have to sit and wait and hope that one day there will be light at the end of the tunnel that we were hoping for as a country. Anita, yes.
Yes. Well done, Mr. with what you guys are doing. My question is, how do you handle cases of trauma? They actually intercept these people from the sea, maybe sometimes minors, how they actually bring them from the sea.
So among the stakeholders we work with includes the Gambia Red Cross Society. And what the GRCS does is they provide psychosocial support to most of these migrants. In fact, they also support us in trying to provide feeding for them while they're kept here for investigations. So GID doesn't have the power to provide psychological support. And that is why we have to engage with the Gambia Red Cross Society to be able to provide all this support to us. So today they've not been here yet because we're releasing these people shortly once they are done investigations. But they have been also very much key in the work we've done. So they're always given As you can remember, in the first case we had at the Monkey Park, we have to make sure that all those who went health centers were given training course before getting now will take them here for investigation. So we are very much concerned. Remember, the migrants are not lawbreakers. They are victims in smuggling. And every victim needs to be observed and also given the rights to deserve as a person. So right to health and welfare is a key to us, and that is why we work together with the Gambian society to always provide them with services of support throughout their stay in the department. If we still have any further questions, we'll be glad to answer. If there is none, then Ali, you want to say something?
No, I think
So in the absence of any further questions, we would want to thank you all for your time and presence here and for your continuous collaboration with the GID in all these engagements. We look forward to seeing you in party engagements.
Can we have images of
Yes, please.